Hi everyone. So I'm continuing my series on loving the various sun signs, and now I'm doing Cancer. And I have put up a few cards as kind of way like a focal point, but they are cards that I think reflect themes that I would associate with Cancer. Actually, the one on the left is directly connected to the sign of Cancer, the Chariot card. And it's really interesting because I don't particularly see why they connect the Chariot card to Cancer. I think they could have found something better than that. And the Moon card, I think I looked it up to see whether it was Pisces or Cancer. You know, the Moon rules Cancer, but I think it is connected to Pisces. I guess I should have double checked that before I started this video. But I picked the Chariot because I know for sure it's connected to Cancer. And the Chariot card deals with, victory, but coming from a position of being able to marshal your forces. In other words, you may have a lot of things going on, and you become one-pointed. You become like totally focused on your goal, and you have success. So it's not like this harmonious flow necessarily. It's like the horse may be kind of jerking its head back, and you still manage to kind of take control. But how that connects to Cancer, I can't say. The only thing that I can say that might make things a little bit easier to understand is perhaps because Cancer is a water sign. Your emotional state tends to influence how you react towards life and what you're able to accomplish sometimes. Sometimes people allow their emotions to prevent them from taking necessary action. And so this is kind of like, gaining control over your emotions, I would say. And also your thoughts, your discursive thoughts. On top of that, I also think because Cancer is a cardinal sign, that they are one of the signs that is associated with being in charge of things. So we have Cancer, we have Capricorn, we have Aries, and we have Libra. All of the cardinal signs representing the four elements, and all of them being kind of, I was going to say guided, but actually it's more like, feeling drawn to positions of authority. And for Cancer, that isn't necessarily something that goes along with their nature, because Cancer being a water sign, the classic Cancer individual may be very dreamy, may be very soft-spoken. They may have a rather reticent nature. There's always this sense that I get from Cancer of being a little bit unsure of themselves in a very self-effacing and charming way. Now, this is like, for sure, a broad brush, because Cancer is right next to Gemini on one side and Leo on the other. And both Gemini and Leo are very gregarious signs. Leo is very confident. Gemini is very chatty and witty. And, they could definitely have personal planets in either one of these areas. In addition to, some points like your moon, your rising sign can be in any sign. It doesn't matter, what sign you have. You can have any sign for the moon or the rising sign. So that can also increase the odds of the person being a lot different than you would think that they would be for being a Cancer. But the quintessential Cancer I think it's pretty clear, is someone who is very soft-spoken and very nurturing, because Cancer rules the 4th house of home and family. And so they can have this, concern for other people. They want to feed other people. That's a big one with Cancer. They tend to be really good cooks and mother other people. And so whether or not a Cancer person has children of their own, and most of them probably will, whether it's their child or children or other people's, maybe they adopt, or maybe they just end up being a teacher, some kind of an area where they can take care of children in some way. Whatever it is that they decide to do, there's always going to be that element of caretaking that's involved. And so, one thing that just came to my mind is that if you are someone who is involved with a Cancer male, he may be a mama's boy. And that, I was thinking of Sly Stallone. And he's a Cancer. And I remember he was very close to his mother, who I think passed away recently. Like in the last couple of years. Not sure about that. But very close to his mother. And she was an astrologer, by the way. And I think she was a Sagittarian. But she was a very kind of like a very, I don't know if you'd call her eccentric or just very outgoing, very, amusing type of a person. But he was very devoted to her. And a lot of these Cancer men tend to have that reverence for their mothers. So if you're thinking of getting with a Cancer man, you better be prepared for marrying his mother too. And the other thing about that is, if you are already with a Cancer man and he is very enmeshed with his mother, and you think that there's something wrong with that, I have been saying this in all these videos, you have to accept people where they are. If you don't like a certain behavior, you think it's dysfunctional, you think that it's excessive, that's cool. I don't think that there's anything wrong in, openly sharing your observations about something, If somebody is drinking too much, if somebody is allowing their parents to control them, even if they're adults. I mean, any possible thing that you are affected by within a relationship, I think you have the right to say something. However, you either accept their answer or not. If they say, well, I don't think I'm doing anything wrong, and I'm going to continue to see my mother whenever I feel like it, and I don't care if she doesn't like you, I'm not going to defend you because she's my mother. If you get that kind of response, then you have to decide if you're willing to put up with that. But it really does come down to acceptance or rejection of what the other person stands for. It really can be that simple. Now, I realize that if you're in love with somebody, it's hard to just walk away. So don't think that I don't get that. I totally get that. With Cancer women, there can be it's really kind of strange, because with this cardinal energy, I notice across the board that there's a kind of bossiness that a lot of cardinal people have. And so it's kind of like a controlling nature, but how it manifests is different with the different signs that have it as, their modality. So an Aries person is just like going to be like generally bossy, especially about, but they want things their own way because they believe that, they're very self-absorbed, or they can be very self-absorbed. So it's like that's what they see in front of them is whatever it is that they like, their preferences. Somebody who's a Libra may want to have control in terms of their, sense of destiny in a relationship and making sure that it stays where they want it to. There may be other areas where they're willing to concede, but that is a very important area for them. For Capricorn, it's their career. It's like that's the area that they really are focused on. And so if they are in a job, they take it very seriously. If they have a position of authority, they take it seriously as well. And they want to have that ability to call the shots and to kind of, realize their vision in a professional sense. For Cancer, it's like being the rule of the roost, being the homemaker who, kind of is in charge of the family. So with Cancer mothers, you can get someone who really relishes and identifies with her role as a mother. Where problems tend to arise, and this can be also true of the Cancer father, because he will be also a nurturer. So whether, the gender really doesn't matter. It's the fact that they are in the role of the parent, because Cancer is the family. Then the father will also be family oriented. So it's going to be the same thing. And so where Cancer parents can have issues is when their child becomes either a preteen or a teenager and starts to kind of develop their sense of self. And this can be extremely threatening to a Cancer parent, because they can feel as if they are losing their power. And so what I would say, if you are a Cancer parent, or if you have a Cancer parent, if you have a Cancer parent, just understand that this is what's going on. If you feel like, let's say you could be an adult child and they may still try to treat you like you're 15 years old or 10 years old, and you can get very, pissed off about it, because you think that they are trying to diminish you. And in fact, it's just that they are trying to feel powerful in their own right. And of course, anytime that we try to use other people to feel powerful, that's not going to end well. We always have to have a sense of self. There's a sense of autonomy that is not dependent on the outside world. And that means including your profession. If somehow you lose a job, for instance, that you don't take it to the extreme and think that you don't exist, that you have no sense of identity. That's an outer thing. It's subject to change. And so anything that's subject to change is not your true identity. So in terms of a Cancer child, if you are a parent of a Cancer child, realize that they may be even quite fearful. Cancer tends to be very security oriented. So when they are young, they may be very clingy to the parents long after other children. Do not compare children one to the other. This is true of any sign. Don't compare your children. Don't say, well, Sally was able to, she didn't start having a crying fit when I would take her to nursery school. Why are you? Aren't you a big boy? And you're a boy. You shouldn't be doing this. A boy or a girl Cancer is very sensitive. So they may, and they're very connected to the parents. So they may do better not even going to preschool. A lot of children did not go to preschool. Preschool is a relatively recent phenomenon. Just remember that, and forget about daycare. I'm just talking about preschool. Daycare is a whole nother can of worms. But preschool is relatively new. Kids would go to school in kindergarten or even in first grade where they were a little bit more developed. And there are developmental reasons for this. I studied early childhood education. Okay, so we're trying to push children into being something that they cannot be, and forcing them into these situations prematurely. And and then we compare them to other children who are better able to handle it. And all of those things are unfair, I feel. So if you have a child and you must, because you're working, you must have them in some kind of a daycare or some kind of a preschool or a situation like that, you have to get things, you have to set it up so that they are as comfortable as possible. You may even want to figure out some alternative where it's not necessarily where they're in a room of 20 kids. If they have to be in daycare very early, then maybe a home daycare or something like that. But something where it feels more nurturing and there's more time for them to get attention, because they may crave attention. They may be the crybaby, the kid who cries at the drop of a hat, who is very timid, and they may get teased for that sometimes. So it's better for them if there's a relative that could take care of them or something like that, because they will be affected by those kind of things more than the average child. For adults who love a Cancer person, I'm talking about like romantic love, realize that fearfulness may persist, maybe their whole life, where they are always worried about the future. And it's not something that you can really argue them out of. They may just be very, very convinced that life is scary and the unknown is scary. And I would say that if it bothers you that they are so cautious, then you may not be a good match. If you're an Aries person, I'm picking another cardinal sign that sometimes seems to find a Cancer person. You may be like really irritated by that because you're kind of a daredevil. Well, maybe you've picked a person who is more, who's good for you on a practical level, because they may clean up all your messes. I mean, I'm not even talking about literal messes. I'm talking about, it could be like if you tend to be a lot less organized or concerned about your finances, they can kind of keep tabs on things. But they may not overall be good in terms of how you would just have mutual adventures together. You may be on different pages. I picked Kuan Yin in the middle there. Or I'm sorry, why did I say Kuan Yin? Kuan Yin. And that's the goddess. She's a goddess associated with, she's an ascended master, I think. And she was associated with Saint Germain in this workshop that I attended, and which had to do with light activations and things like that. So they say care and compassion, and so I do associate that. I think that a lot of Cancer people are very compassionate. They care about others. They're not self-centered, except maybe emotionally. Sometimes Cancers can be very needy emotionally, to the point where they can't see another person's point of view because they're just so wrapped up in what, in other words, like feeling sorry for themselves, and even like resorting to manipulation sometimes, in order to get their needs met. And it depends on, how they grew up. If they did not experience nurturing, then it may be exacerbated because they're trying to get it from other people. And then I have this Six of Cups, and that's a card I keep joking about, that I keep picking over and over again. Now, that's another thing that I did not check out to make sure of, or to try to see if it's directly connected to Cancer. It is connected to water element because it's cups, but I would not be surprised if the Six of Cups was connected to Cancer, because it deals with nostalgia, and this is in the past, your childhood, and this is what I associate with Cancer. Cancerians tend to love the past. They tend to be history buffs as a result, because they have a very retentive memory. And this is one of the areas that I was talking about with manipulation, because, you know, you get in a fight with a Cancer person and they will tell you all the bad things you did, you know, 10 years ago. But, you know, the weird thing about it, and, you know, every sign has quirks, and sometimes they're very contradictory. The thing about Cancer is that a lot of them in relationships will be very, it seems like, well, maybe am I exaggerating by saying a lot of them? It seems like, and this is true of water signs in general, that they tend to be tight-lipped about their past, or they kind of give out only a little bit of information about it. They're not open books on the subject. And maybe this is just when the person has had a bad childhood, or they don't want to remember certain things. I just think it's kind of funny that they have such great memories and then they don't share their own past sometimes. If they're so in love with the past, why don't they share it? But sometimes it's painful to them, and so they don't want to relive it. And I'm speaking specifically of Cancer when I'm talking about this. But on the plus side, you know, they can be very sentimental because they really cherish their times with other people. And we need this in society. We need people who have actual caring. You know, I'm the kind of person, sometimes I'm a little bit detached. And even though I'm a sentimental person in some regards, I am very detached in other ways. And we need the people, because they sustain us. People like these Cancer individuals, they keep the fire burning when it comes to our family histories and the happy memories and just our sense of continuity as a society. They nurture us, so we should always appreciate them. Take care, you guys. Bye.